It's easy for the experts to tell us that once the Romans withdrew from Britannia, anarchy and chaos reigned supreme. Well, this week on the Coastal Catalogue, we're here to look at a site that suggests anything but. For this week's investigation, I welcome you to the Mote of Mark in that there Scotland. This beautiful hill fort overlooks the estuary. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. U-R-R, not U-R-E as in Midge-Ure, for those of you who remember him, which is most of my demographic. Over there in the estuary you can see Rough Island, which I presume is named after its terrain and that it's not full of cool blimey gov cockneys or anything like that. Excavations in 1913, 1973 and 1979 have shown that this hill fort was in occupation in the 6th to 7th century. In the 1913 excavation, one of the experts tried to claim that it was Iron Age. He found some sort of flints, but someone promptly pointed out that they were medieval striker-lights. He wandered off into the distance, muttering something about, yeah, maybe they were reused found Iron Age flints. But no, it's the 6th to 7th century that stuff was happening here. It may have been the same disgruntled expert who then came back at them pointing out that they had some Roman finds from the fort, but it was very quickly pointed out to him that they were contemporary with the 6th century. I think that's a bit of tripod shadow there. Please can you overlook it? So the chieftains or the princes, and note that for later, who were living here, were being served by skilled metal workers and jewellery makers. The finds of crucibles and casts show that there were some magnificent products being manufactured here in the 6th and 7th century. And the really fascinating thing is that the imports were coming here from the Mediterranean, from Germany, from the Bordeaux region of France, and also from distant locations within Britain as well, York and the Lake District, although that's not quite so far away. But there was some classy stuff being made here in the Dark Ages. It's fine, isn't it, this tripod shadow here? It really isn't a problem. It's not a problem. So at the time when we were supposedly meant to be eating manky turnips and crying into our poor quality beer, the chieftain or prince, note that, living here was enjoying the high life with fine forms of early Celtic jewellery at his or her disposal. Despite being all frozen, I actually ended up getting really hot on this shoot, and I considered discarding some tweed, what I would have done for an ice cream, but hey, it's January and it was Scotland. Eventually and inevitably, the Dark Ages caught up with this fort. In the 7th century, it was attacked. The wooden palisades were burnt, and the fire was so intense that many of the rocks in the significant stone walls were vitrified. The attack was very possibly by the Northumbrian Angles. Vitrified stonework from the attack. And I don't want to get into this whole Scottish independence thing, but back in this fort's heyday, it was located in a British kingdom. And I'll put the name of that up on the screen so I don't have to try and say it. I'm now appearing here fully as a shadow to address this idea that the opulence and the skills here in the 500s and the 600s runs counter to this standard view of the Dark Ages as being a time of darkness. Increasingly, historians, like myself, are moving towards the idea of continuity. Yes, there were major problems as a result of the collapse of the Western Roman Empire, but there was also continuity. things were changing, adapting, but life and its trappings and its trades continued. Also worth remembering that apart from that brief period where the Romans had their Antonine Wall, the Mark of Mote, or is that Mote, I'm not sure, was not under Roman control. Trading with them, yes, but independent. And in terms of Roman Britain, that had been consigned to the history books at least 150 years before this fort hit its stride. Also, this is a small fort. The riches here only really speak to us of some powerful warlord. They say nothing about the everyday common or garden folk and what their lives were like. But all that aside, the evidence here of imports from the Mediterranean and France and Germany and other far-flung parts of Britain does perhaps warrant us to peer quizzically over our half-moon glasses a bit. Oh, and because this is the coastal catalogue, can I just say to the individual who habitually does a dislike when it is the coastal catalogue, not any of the others, just the coastal catalogue, always disliking it, can you stop doing that, please? You obviously don't like them, so just don't watch them. It's really simple. I mean, it's not bothering me or anything, it's not getting to me, it just seems a pointless waste of your time. The name Mark of Mote, or Mark of Mote, is more a case of legend as opposed to historical record. It's actually named after the King of Dumnonia, and that's Cornwall in new money. King Mark of Dumnonia. It's a bit odd, I think, having a King Mark. It's a little bit like having a King Terry or a King Gary. And I bet now I've said that, someone will find evidence of examples of both of those and put that in the comments. Or a King Darren, there's never been one of those. There should be. And now we seg awkwardly into a tale of romance and chivalry. The story that has somehow become attached to this place began to be written down in the 12th century, but it was based on a Celtic legend. Tristan sets off to Ireland on behalf of his uncle Mark, the King of Dumnonia, to escort Isolde or Isolde back to Cornwall to marry Mark. But there was a monumental cock-up on the way back when Tristan and Iseult accidentally ingested a love potion and begun an adulterous affair. There are lots of variations as to what happened next in this tale, with Uncle Mark variously being vengeful and murderous or sympathetic. The story of Tristan and Iseult spread all around the world, and there are versions of the tale even in Persia. By the 13th century, inevitably Tristan had been enlisted into the Knights of the Round Table and was serving Arthur, obviously. Interestingly, a Drewston stone was found in Cornwall, I think dated to the 550s. Drewston, Tristan, you get the general idea. And in the Irish version of the tale, there is actually reference to a King of Scotland, so possibly there's some form of kernel of truth in the link of the Mote of Mark and the story of Tristan and Iseult. An interesting hill fort that didn't come into existence until the 500s and was home to sophisticated processes of manufacture that somewhat flies in the face of those who believe this was a period where everything fell to pieces. And then later on it became associated with this Celtic legend that became a medieval tale of chivalry, and never to be then being co-opted into all the Arthurian nonsense. And later on in the Victorian era, by the way, when they got all into medieval chivalry, was his name Wagner or Wagner? I never know which. He even wrote an opera about Tristan and Iseult. I hope you've enjoyed that. Please like and subscribe. And I'd like to end by saying a hello to Stephanie, who I have just met, and hopefully you're now a subscriber. Hello, Stephanie.